How's it going, everybody? Thank you for checking out my channel and welcome to today's video. Before we actually get started on the video, I want to make sure to make this very clear, despite that I mentioned this in the first 5 seconds, that there are going to be timestamps in the video's description, so that way if you guys want to bounce around to certain topics such as going over the gear, the strategies, or even just the gameplay itself, they're going to be there for you to use at your discretion, so that way you don't have to listen to a part that maybe doesn't intrigue you as much as something else would. Because of the fact that I'm going to be covering certain topics of this video a little bit more than usual, because I want to make sure to have as much information out there as possible and cover certain different alternatives when it comes to the gear, for example. That way people have as much information as possible when trying to do a project like this, if they choose to do so as well. Other than that, this is a project I'm incredibly excited to be able to bring to you guys, because this is something that I've been wanting to do since patch 2.4 was launched. With the new buffs to the Act 5 Mercenary, I've actually been curious to see if the Act 5 Mercenary could take on Ubers by themselves, as far as the entire process of going through the mini Ubers all the way to Uber Tristram itself, and see if they can actually clear the entire thing completely by themselves as far as attacking. Now, my character is simply just going to be for support purposes when it comes to teleporting around to be able to move around faster, to be able to help with crowd control with Howl, as well as to be able to supplement health with the rejuves if the life tap's not able to do so or just doesn't go off at all. Now, my character is again just going to be support role. Everything as far as the attack is going to be coming from the Act 5 Mercenary, so all of the kills are going to go to him. And that's what I wanted to test, because of the fact that if you are familiar with my channel, you guys would know that I like to do stuff that's a little bit out of the box, and I like to test out certain things to see if they're possible, such as before, when I went and tested to see if an Act 2 Mercenary and a Valkyrie are able to take on Uber Tristram by themselves in Pluggy 1.13. And if you spawn the right type of Valkyrie with the right type of mods on the gear, yes, they can actually solo Ubers completely by themselves, and your character just simply is a decoy. Just like my Naked Summon Necromancer was when I had him solo Ubers from Minis to Uber Tristram, proving that a no gear character could successfully get a torch in Pluggy 1.13. And for this video, I'm going to go over the different strategies they use, different alternatives, the gear, and then show you the gameplay. Now, certain parts of the video will actually be sped up to be able to save some time, because certain fights did take a lot longer than others, and I don't want this video to be incredibly long. But there will be an indication on the screen of just how fast it's actually sped up, as well as the time to be able to show in real life how long it took to be able to kill the Ubers. But before we get into the video, let's do a comment shout out, and today's comment shout out is going to come from Brood180 from my video about how to spawn declone faster or even immediately when it comes to playing in Pluggy, asking if he has a chance to be able to do Ubers with his budget smiter because he was able to kill declone pretty easily. I say yeah, you have the potential to be able to probably get through Uber Tristram without too much issue, especially if you kill declone pretty easily, but do take into consideration that there are 3 Ubers in Uber Tristram, and with a budget character, if they end up surrounding you and fighting at the same time, it could be too much for your character to handle. So if you end up seeing this, check out 2 of my videos where I go over a complete beginner's guide of Uber Tristram, from getting your keys all the way to Uber Tristram, different stats of the Ubers, strategies, and a lot more important information to be able to actually get the torch at the end of it, as well as a different video going into even more depth on how to be able to survive in Uber Tristram a lot easier, as well as to be able to separate the Ubers so that we don't have to fight them all at the same time. With all that said, let's get into the video.
Death can save you from me.
Greetings, mortal. I knew you would find your way back here.
With the launch of the patch 2.4 notes, and a lot of people talking about the Act 5 Mercenary was now getting the necessary buff to be a viable choice comparatively speaking to the Act 2 Mercenary, and as well as the new weapons for them to be able to use, which is one-hand swords, to give them more choices in different weapons to be able to use. A lot of people were talking about the Act 5 Mercenary could potentially now solo Ubers completely by themselves. And I ended up watching Dabrunski talk about his experience when it came to taking an Act 5 Mercenary through the entire course of doing the mini Ubers all the way to Uber Tristram, where he still was a little bit skeptical on the ability for the Act 5 Mercenary to be able to do it himself.
Apparently this is possible. I kind of have my doubts, especially against Lilith and Uber Mephisto. I think I can maybe make it work. Apparently through the grapevine I've heard other content creators have accomplished this. So this is my summarization of this. You couldn't get minus Lilith, get an Act 5 Mercenary to run through Uber Tristram with you. To try and run this like solo setup, like I said, the best reference is I'd rather take a door and slam it on my head a couple times than to try and do this. The Act 5 Mercenary can do well in Ubers, but I'd be hard pressed to see something work better than this, other than possibly some sort of teleporting Holy Bolt Paladin setup.
I also asked Sir for his opinion on whether this could be potentially possible or not during his latest Hardcore Throw Barbarian livestream.
Act 5 Merc with Endgame gear can solo Ubers. That would be cool to see. Only problem is, well, honestly, if you help him out, if you're not part of the equation, I don't know. If you give him a life tap, absolutely. Although you could probably give him No, you can't wear gloves. Oh, I can't. It'd be close. Dual-wielding Last Wish Grief would be very powerful.
Okay, say less. The Active Mercenary that I chose is Damien, who has Frenzy, Taunt, and Iron Skin. The benefit to this is, with each successful hit from Frenzy, he has the ability to increase not only his movement speed, but his attack speed. That way he's able to land more successful hits to have more things proc off from his gear. And speaking of gear, it's not going to be that much different than Dabrunski used, minus one variant when it comes to the body armor, but I'll go over that in just a bit. For the helmet, it's a chammed Ariat's face for the same reasons he did for Cannot Be Frozen, the boost to attack rating, plus the skills, and all the other beneficial mods that make this helmet such an amazing item to use. For the weapons, I'm using Kingslayer for open wounds, crushing blow. For the other weapon, I'm using Last Wish because of all the beneficial things that it has for survivability as far as life tap, proccing fade. It also has enhanced damage and the Might Aura, which really helps when it comes to increasing the damage. And for the body armor, I'm using Duress. Now the reason I'm using Duress as the primary body armor compared to sticking to something like Chains of Honor, which I will use for Uber Mephisto only, Fortitude, and Treachery for the IS boost or the ability to proc fade, is because I'm focusing on 3 important key things going into Uber Tristram that's going to make my Act 5 mercenary survive that much easier and to kill the Ubers that much faster. The first is going to be survivability with life tap from Last Wish or from my Marowak boots for the charges to be able to have it go off in case it doesn't happen from the weapon itself. The second thing is going to be having open wounds. There's a lot on Kingslayer, but it's unfortunately for me not enough. So that's where you're going to pair it up with Duress, Kingslayer, and it's going to be proccing off quite frequently, so that way they don't regenerate their health fast or even at all, which was a huge issue when it came to testing this out before the actual run where it completely worked. So that's why I wanted to focus on that. And the third thing, when it comes to going into this, is Crushing Blow. Unfortunately, Crushing Blow is only going to be really beneficial for the first half to maybe 3/4 of the fight because it is something that knocks off a percentage of health. It's not going to be a base number, which is something you'd want to use for the last bit of the fight, which if you guys are familiar, I talked about this when I go over Grief and Last Wish. And when it comes to talking about Death and Bati and Eth Berserker axes, you need to have a good medium between Crushing Blow, which deals a percentage of the current monster's health, so it's going to be the most beneficial at the beginning. And then you want to have a good amount of base damage when it comes to the last little bit, because that last little sliver is so incredibly hard to get past. And a couple times when it came to doing this, that was all it took for my mercenary to either die or for my character to die, and the run was done. So you want to have that good balance, but having good Crushing Blow at the beginning of the fight is where it's going to be really beneficial to have their health go down fast, especially when it comes to using Frenzy and having you get more successful hits. It's going to make it to where it's going to start chunking at their health that much sooner, so that way they'll be able to get the fight done that much faster. Because again, the Active Mercenary is going to suffer from low attack rating. And the only other thing that I'm going to be really supporting my Act 5 Mercenary with as far as my gear, besides the Marowak boots, is going to be the Rumored Beast. And it's going to be for the Fanaticism Aura to be able to help with their attack speed, attack rating, and their damage overall, even though it's not going to be quite as beneficial, such as if the Act 5 Mercenary was able to use it themselves, which hopefully in the near future, they can open up the weapon bases to be able to include axes, and then the Act 5 Mercenary is just going to be a complete tank. The last thing I'm going to use to support him is Demon Limb, which I actually ended up finding just before starting this project. Luckily, I found it at Duriel, and I did end up actually making a drop highlight video out of it if you want to check it out. I'm not going to be using it when it comes to the mini Ubers, because I want to show just how powerful the Act 5 Mercenary really is, and then I will be using it with the enchant charges when it comes to Uber Tristram, because of the fact that he really needs to focus on being able to make successful hits. Granted, it would be helpful all the way through, but again, I just wanted to be able to show just how powerful the Act 5 Mercenary really can be, even with the low amount of attack rating that he has without using Demon Limb. As far as the alternatives, you can use Chains of Honor all the way through if you would like to. I ended up using it through the mini Ubers a couple times, and it did actually work. It was very slow, but it did end up working. You can use Fortitude, which has even more enhanced damage. It doesn't have as much resistance help as Chains of Honor, but it does help quite a bit. And you could use Treachery for certain parts of it, like for example, when it came to fighting Duriel, once I had life tack procced, I did end up a couple times switching over to Treachery just to test it out, see if it could work. I did get quite a bit more hits, but unfortunately, it's not going to be enough to be able to be a viable use for the entire time that you're actually fighting any of the mini Ubers or even just going into Uber Tristram at all. But those are what I used when it came to doing this run. For the rest of it, it's going to be from start to finish when I go into the portals to finding them and then going all the way into Uber Tristram. And I hope you guys will be able to enjoy it. Let's go ahead and check it out.
Round 1. Fight!
As you can see, within the first 10 seconds when fighting Duriel, the high amount of crushing blow from all of the gear, paired with the high amount of open wounds, is helping take out a lot of his health, even to the halfway mark, and keep it from regenerating. Granted, at a certain point, he did land enough successful hits on my mercenary to start slowly getting some health back. But with my Merc getting back in the fight, he was able to maintain knocking down Duriel's health enough to be able to kill him. I do have Fortitude in my inventory as a last resort, as I was still testing whether Duress would be enough to work at the last portion of the fights, at least against Duriel, Izual, and Lilith. And in some cases, when testing it prior, it did help because the weapon's actual damage is needed over Crushing Blow at the very end of the fight. But in the end, it proved to not be necessary. This helped me to really show just how powerful and underrated Duress really is, as it is one of my personal favorite body armors to use by my mercenaries when it comes to running Uber Tristram. This is where the fight was the hardest because the Crushing Blow's diminishing return took effect, and my mercenary had to rely on the base damage of the weapons to take away the last sliver of health from Duriel. At this point, you could potentially swap to Grief if you would like, because of the additional flat damage as well as the additional enhanced damage on the Runeward if you really need help with killing them.
Round 2. Fight!
When it comes to providing crowd control for your mercenary, it's important to know that even if the minion is not within melee range, if they get close enough to the mercenary, they could draw his attention away either by having him turn around or even go after them, making the Ubers have the chance for open wounds to wear off and regenerate their health. So it's important to maintain good crowd control and keep the minions away at a safe distance so that he can focus solely on the Ubers. I had to jump cut it ahead about 10 minutes because I needed to be able to get more rejuves, as I felt she would have me using every single one of them in my inventory and belt, and I needed to be able to find her, which took a bit of time. Once I did, I had my Act 5 mercenary clear the area outside of the room that she was in and lure her out. The reason that I'm using the dual whiz spikes right now, comparatively speaking to the Rumored Beast, to be able to help with my Act 5 mercenary clearing out the area before Lilith, is because if we end up in a bind and he's either about to die or I'm about to die, I want to be able to still have enough FCR to teleport us away quickly, so that way we are not in any danger, comparatively speaking to just adding extra damage, attack rating, and attack speed for him. But when it comes to fighting Lilith, I will go back to using the Fanaticism Aura support, but for right now, it is going to be the safest bet to be able to clear out the area before Lilith by having my dual whiz spikes be able to teleport away if needed.
Round 3. Fight!
My strategy was to have her get stuck in the doorway to have the range of her poison attacks limited, but I ended up being in the doorway instead. She did focus on my mercenaries, but switched to focusing on me, and for Lilith that seems like an ideal way to be able to kill her, as my barbarian would have better odds of surviving against her, and my mercenary would be able to just focus on attacking her without being interrupted.
Bruh. Let's rock. Come get some. Final round. Fight!
I wanted to separate and handle Uber Mephisto first. The main reason is, I don't want either my barbarian or the mercenary affected by his conviction aura if he was to fight any of the other Ubers at the time and Mephisto was close enough to affect us both with it, making our survivability be questionable. Also, with his physical resistance lower than Baal and Diablo, as long as myself and the mercenary were alive, my mercenary setup was more than enough to be able to start taking down Uber Mephisto's health fast. For this project, taking out Uber Mephisto first is the best strategy to be able to handle the rest of Uber Tristram.
I'll put that to good use. My brothers will not have died in vain.
Unfortunately, with Baal spawning his clone, I went to find Diablo and it ended up actually being a better decision than focusing on Baal at the moment, as he had not only his minion spawning, but the spawning of his festering appendages were the reason his fight took close to, or even as long, as the fight between Mephisto and Diablo combined. What was nice about fighting Diablo is because my mercenary was in melee range and right in Diablo's face, he was either barely affected or not even affected at all by his lightning hose, making Diablo's main and strongest attack useless, leaving him to have to use other attacks and skills. This helped with the mercenary surviving easier, and at some points allowing him to supplement his own health because Diablo wasn't dealing more damage than life tap was giving back to him. But just as it was with Izual and Mephisto, it's important to keep minions away to not affect the mercenary's focus on the Ubers and allow for open wounds to no longer work. So you do end up having to sing a lot if you aren't in an open enough area to drive the minions far enough away from the mercenary's taunt range. I really needed Baal to be in a very open area because I needed any of the minions he spawns to scatter as far away as possible for both Mephisto and Diablo. Some minions were howled away, but many kept coming back from not being able to be far enough away to not be taunted back by the mercenary. Also, with the minions eventually staying away for the most part, this allowed for me to focus on strictly just supporting my mercenary because of any of the issues I faced during this project. Having to look over the screen, especially with Lilith and Mephisto, as far as simultaneously watching my health, the mercenary's health, providing good crowd control, repositioning, and maintaining enough rejuice from my inventory to my belt to keep myself and the mercenary alive when life tap wasn't enough was by far the biggest struggle I faced. With Baal's Claw no longer an issue, what made this fight drag on were the spawning of the festering appendages, not because they could do ridiculous damage, but because they could potentially put the mercenary into hit recovery or take his focus away from Baal, and it always seemed to just conveniently happen when Baal was down to the last sliver of health, giving him the chance for open wounds to wear off and to start regenerating his health. Because this run was focused on my mercenary doing all of the damage, I unfortunately couldn't help when it came to the appendages. We had to wait for them to disappear, or he would attack them and Baal together, leading to many instances of Baal having his health back to nearly the B in his name, or the rare occasion of even being halfway back. This issue is what made killing Baal the hardest and take the longest, even compared to killing Lilith and Mephisto. Despite in my Uber Tristram guide video, I mentioned that Baal may be the easiest of the Ubers to kill. But unfortunately now, seeing a melee-focused character, even while enchanted for better attack rating, suffer greatly against the Lord of Destruction was unfortunately very painful to watch. Again, those festering appendages were the biggest obstacle fighting Baal, and without them interfering at the most inopportune time, this fight would have been much shorter. Great example of the appendages spawning and attacking the Act 5 mercenary to take his attention away from Baal and being just far enough away to not be able to be attacked back, drawing this fight out much longer than it really had to be. What was nice about the Mercenaries fight with both Diablo and Baal was because he was able to focus on those Ubers without distractions for the most part, and being buffed with Enchant as he was using Frenzy, he ended up being able to supplement his own health and keep his resistances and damage reduction up by continuously having the successful hits with Last Wish, causing the procs to go off frequently. Baal was not able to do enough damage to be able to outdo what Life Tap was giving back to the Mercenary, aside from a few close calls. But other than that, with me only casting battle orders every now and then to be able to bring the Mercenary's health back up, aside from that just standing behind Baal to not be in the path of any of his attacks aside from his Novas, he was being quite the tank and was able to handle dealing with his own survivability overall, which is really nice to be able to see for a Mercenary that's not only going to be dealing a lot of damage, but it's also going to be self-sufficient when it comes to their survivability.
See you in hell.
Now, as far as the alternative that Dabrunski talked about when it comes to the Holy Bolt Paladin,
I'd be hard-pressed to see something work better than this, other than possibly some sort of teleporting Holy Bolt paladin setup.
I have mixed feelings with that, because if you're just simply trying to help the Act 5 mercenary kill the Ubers and not have them actually kill them completely by himself, yes, that would be a good option, because you could just holy bolt them and to be able to give them life aside from rejuves or from life tap when it comes to Marowaks or Last Wish if you get that to your mercenary. But as far as having the mercenary do it completely by themselves, as far as just something fun to try out, you're not going to have crowd control when it comes to a holy bolt paladin, because yes, you have sanctuary for the undead, but for all the other enemies that you're going to fight, especially like demons, you're not going to have any kind of crowd control unless you go up one by one and start killing them off individually. Looking here at what Dartlin Gaming did to show how his paladin was able to support his mercenary and trying to do Ubers, you can make the argument for maxing fanaticism and holy bolt to really buff the mercenary compared to using the Runeward Beast and not having to use as many rejuves. But again, the lack of crowd control is the main issue here, especially in Uber Tristram when potentially facing an Uber and their minions one by one, let alone if facing all three and their minions all at once. Having a good and reliable source of crowd control for all the different monster type minions is essential in making a run like this work. And at that point, it's just a little bit too much effort for what it's worth, and I would just suggest using a Barbarian with Howl to be able to scatter them to keep them away long enough for your Act 5 mercenary to be able to kill the Ubers. But with that said, I encourage you guys to let me know what you guys think in the comments, if this is something that you feel is the best way to be able to go about having your Act 5 mercenary go through all of the Uber process. If you have any ideas as far as tweaking the items to be able to use. Other than that, I hope you guys enjoyed it and were able to see just how powerful the Act 5 mercenary really can be. If you like this kind of content, want to see more, hit the subscribe button and hit the bell notification to be notified whenever a new video comes out. And if you enjoyed this video, let me know by leaving a like. Also, there's going to be a card in the corner up above that has more of my Diablo 2 Resurrected content. I definitely suggest you guys go check it out. Other than that, hope you're all staying safe, and I'll see you guys in the next video. Take care. Thanks.
Okay, bet. I'm dead ass going to try to make that happen. For all the awesome content you make for us, if I can complete it, it's for you. Oh, thanks so much. I appreciate it. Yeah, no, definitely. Good luck. Hope you can do it.